All right, we're recording. Thank you guys for joining us. So this is our session 3 of day 2. There's one more session to go after this for ICAP members, which is about business mindset, straight after this session. But we are all going to be talking about growing in a competitive market with Isaac Buchanan. So Isaac, I'm sure he'll tell you about himself in a second, but he, until recently, was the CEO of Snap Fitness, which was a big fitness company, 70, 80 gyms. Isaac will clarify in a second. At the moment, obviously, big growth plans, I'm sure, for that brand. And now also has launched a new software business, which he'll talk to you about and story that as well. So Isaac, thank you firstly for joining us. Yeah, feel free to get started with your presentation. Tell us about you, wherever you want to go. And guys, if you've got questions throughout this, please do either ask them on the chat function, or you can save them till the end and we can ask Isaac for it. And it's being recorded too, so you can watch it back if you need to. So yeah, Isaac, thanks for joining us.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. I'm just confirming. Can you see my screen, Andy?
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
No, I'm going to switch my video off because I'm going to be just referring to my notes a lot. Guys, I just want to say thanks very much for having me. I think lockdown drives us all a little bit crazy, so I'm using this as an excuse to be social and get my voice out there. I love, getting involved with people, and so lockdown's kind of my worst nightmare. So I'm really happy just to be able to talk to everyone today. So I'm not going to talk too much about myself or the new business that I'm running. I really just want this to be hopefully a bit of a learning exercise for everyone on the call. Hopefully, I think you can learn from my mistakes. I'm certainly no expert, but I've had a fairly good career over 17 years, mostly just learning from my mistakes. It's how I go. So hopefully, I can impart some of that today, which can certainly be applied to the activity sector that you're in. So a little bit of induction about me. So I spent 10 years in retail in Australia. You can probably tell by now my accent is not British, so I'm probably the token import for this call. I moved over to the UK about 7 years ago, and I've spent about 7 years now in health and fitness, and now just over a year in software development. But I've actually been in the franchise space quite a long time. So I've been a franchisee since I was 22 of a retail store back in Oz, and that's kind of been my introduction into business, and it's kind of just evolved from there. And as Andy mentioned, I was the CEO for Snap Fitness for the last 5 years in the UK. So myself and two business partners we knew the brand from Australia, where it's quite successful, and we decided that we were going to try and bring that brand, which is originally an American brand, into the UK market. We thought there was an opportunity, and so we all moved over and took the challenge. And we actually ended up being, which I guess is why Andy's invited us here today, is we were one of the fastest growing fitness businesses in the UK for a certain amount of years, and we were Snap Fitness's fastest growing market globally for 3 of the 5 years that I was lucky enough to lead the business. So the goal for today, as mentioned, is just share some of my personal lessons and mistakes, and hopefully you can learn from that, and questions as we go. So what we're kind of going to cover, we're going to talk about what drives you. Really try and get into what your customers want. I think that's key. I don't understand your sector, so this is one for you guys to hopefully go away and work on. Where does your brand fit in? Where does your store or your club or what your operation is, where does that fit in with your competitors? And identifying the key factors for success in your industry. Once we've covered all that, how do we get that message out to our consumers? What impact can timing make? And certainly that's probably very topical right now with COVID. And then how do we continue to evolve to make sure that growth is not short-lived? So talking about what drives you, the first kind of point, and there's going to be some key takeaways on each slide. At the end, there's a bit of an action plan for growth, but do you love what you do is the first thing, and why did you enter the industry that you're currently in? And I'm going to refer everything back to my own experience. And for me, fitness was always a hobby. It was a personal interest. It was something I enjoyed, and I thought I'd really enjoy bringing that to other people. And so that's why I decided to make the jump from retail into an industry I'd never been a part of before, other than a hobby. And I asked that because business is really, as most of you probably on the call would know, is full of highs and lows. It's definitely full of stresses and success, maybe more stress right now than success. And you get these challenges, thrown against you regularly, which can really make you second guess what you're doing. And I've found, the only thing that keeps you going through those times is a genuine passion for what you do. The second part is, are you in it for the long haul? And the best example I can give is, to accomplish really great things takes time. And I'm a really strong believer of this. I've had 2 jobs in 17 years. I've worked for 2 companies. I spent 10 years working for a retailer called Harvey Norman in Australia. And I've spent the last 7 years working for Snap Fitness. And I think that being successful is so much more about being smarter than other people, or being better funded, or having a better idea. It's really about having the commitment to the long haul, which brings so many advantages of the experience that you gain over that time, the learning from the mistakes and not repeating those, learning from others, and just having that much time, you get to try different roles, work on different projects, and you just become a bit more of, an expert over that period of time. And I think that the scary part is about 80% of businesses in the UK fail in the first year, and only 42% of businesses that started exist 5 years later. So when you think about growing in a competitive market, if you want to beat your competition, your first step is just to survive 5 years. If you survive 5 years, you're going to be better off than 60% of your competitors already. So really having that love for what you do will see you through that period. And the last one around what drives you is you got to ask yourself, will you be willing to continue with this business if it fails to generate a return? So I think we all, when we do our business plans and plan to open a business, the underlying reason is that we do want to make a profit. We want to make a living from this business. And what happens if year 1, year 2, those things aren't materializing for us? Are you going to be willing to continue? Will you stick through it? Have you planned to survive those tough times? Because unfortunately they are inevitable, and especially right now. And if you can't have a resounding yes to those questions, then unfortunately you're probably more likely to end up being part of the statistics of businesses that closes than succeeding. And so growing in a competitive market starts with what drives you. So I just challenge you to have a think about that. Moving on. So what do your customers want? So when we got to the UK from Australia, I think, understatement that we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. We certainly didn't understand the UK market, other than, there was a very large population in a very small amount of space. We didn't have massive budgets. We're a privately funded operation. And so, we didn't undertake any expensive market research, although if you can afford to do that in your business, certainly that's a great thing to do. But we started to look to overseas markets. So we were lucky enough to be part of a franchise. And so we looked at, all the best markets around the world. Australia was one of them. US was another one. And asked them, what did you do well? What did you do wrong? What did you wish you did at the start that you didn't do that could have helped? And we researched other markets, and we looked at the best brands in every country that we thought was currently better than the UK. And found out. And a lot of them, the feedback around gyms was, they didn't offer group fitness. They wish that they did. In Australia, the Snap Fitness brand was a budget brand. And a lot of the owners in there said, geez, I wish we never positioned ourselves as a budget brand. It's hard to make money in this space. And so we kind of, research other markets and take their feedback on board. The second part is to get firsthand customer feedback. So I think 2015, probably on paper, was the fittest man in the UK. I think I had 6 or 7 gym memberships at all the different brands. And I was just constantly going in and doing sessions and having conversations with members of our competitors. And if you're not confident enough to go out there and put yourself out into that situation, online is amazing. Go read reviews of all of your competitors. Read 100 reviews for every competitor and look for those consistent negatives around what people are saying, not just the 1s and 2s that might have had a bad experience, but the consistent ones. And so we had this information from other markets where it said, people want group fitness. We didn't have it. Budget's probably not the place to be if you want to make money. And then when we reviewed customers in the UK, there was a lot of negative reviews around, my gym's too busy. The clientele's a little bit rough in the facility. There's been issues of fights and stuff in some of the gyms that we saw, which was crazy. And then the third part is to be realistic and honest with the results. So this can go 2 ways when you figure out what customers want. Firstly, you might find that all of your competitors have great reviews and customers are really happy with the offering. And just because you're passionate about an idea, you really got to be honest with yourself and say, is there a market for this? What's my angle? If customers are already happy with the existing offerings that exist, is there really space for another brand? You got to decide, maybe if the current offerings are are maybe a little bit expensive, can you do the same thing at a lower price and fill that need? But kind of figure out what your customers want. If you can't do market research, summary would be to take it from other markets, speak to real customers, and just be honest with those results when you're thinking about designing your product. And then where do you fit in? So there's really 3 very common price strategies. And sorry if I'm repeating information that you guys already know, but those 3 strategies are low cost. So are you, do you provide what you do cheaper than anybody else? Premium. So are you quite niche? Do you provide extra service, extra value, extra at every single level of what you do? Or are you value or best price, which is somewhere in the middle of budget and premium, and actually quite a difficult space to be in, but certainly there's money to be made there. And so figuring out where you fit is, you got to really look and say, does somebody already do what you do? If so, what is their strategy and how can you differ from that? So if you're in the gym space, there was at the time, Pure Gym, the gym group, they were early on back then, but they were doing low cost really, really well. They had thousands of members, already had 50, 60, 70 clubs, and these guys were doing a terrific job at low cost. There was probably at that point no way that we would have done a better job at doing a low cost business. So that really ruled that one out for us. We looked at premium. Can we be a premium operator? And this is really about understanding your business and how you can relate it. And at the time, London had some of the best boutique gyms in the world. Brands like One Rebel, where the experience was just so extra at every single level, albeit expensive, that we felt that space was already filled. And understanding your model is also key to understanding where you fit. So we're a franchise, and part of the keys of providing and going into that premium space is being able to control every single part of the customer journey. And as a franchise, it's impossible to control your franchisees, where they're all entrepreneurial and they have different ideas. So we couldn't fit there. And so for us, the natural fit was, geez, we're going to have to go into this mid-market space. We're going to have to be a value offering. And so that's how we sort of decided where we fit. And once you've kind of looked at where you can fit, you really need to decide, can you give customers what they want? So from the previous slide, you've really figured out what they want in terms of their service. So for us, it was they want group fitness, they want nice clientele, they don't want it to be too crowded. Can you give your customers that within the constraints of your strategy? So we have chosen mid-market, which means for us, we could price ourselves at about £30 a month. We knew that customers didn't want the gym to be too busy, so we could probably only put about 1,000 to 1,500 members in a club. Was that enough money to then still be able to offer them a membership, include group fitness in the cost, pay the franchise fees, and still make a profit? So just because you've picked a strategy, you know what the customers want, and you've figured out where you fit, really key to figure out, is that going to work for you as a business model? Because sometimes the answer is no. Just going to pause and take a breath. Is there any questions, Andy, at this point? Nothing. I can't see the chat.
Yeah, no, nothing at this point. I suppose one question for me, Isaac, is how in the kids TV sector, it is quite competitive and congested. How do you focus on not getting distracted by it? Obviously, you mentioned One Rebel there. Obviously, you'll be very familiar with their 45, which is a very different offering from what Snap Fitness was, certainly. But there's very different things in the fitness market, and all the way down to the mobile type fitnesses, right? Fitness instructors who do stuff in the parks and that sort of stuff. How do you stop from getting distracted? Because I know that's one thing that some people in the activity sector get distracted by, is other people doing stuff that may be very similar, or maybe it's very different, but still competes for the same people. How do you stop them? Obviously, I'm guessing that maybe the low-cost gyms that would be the gym group and Energy Fitness, and I'm probably missing the main one, which is Pure Gym, right? They're the kind of low-budget, big guys, right? How do you stop from getting pulled into that and competing on price?
Yeah, look, it's a tough question, and I think something that I'm facing at the moment with the software company that we're building is, until you get very confident in what you're offering your customers, you do tend to second guess yourself, and there's a lot of self-awareness, and you can be quite self-conscious about your business, and geez, am I doing all right? Am I the best? And especially if you have financial pressures where maybe your business is struggling financially, it tends to make you think, geez, am I doing the right thing? Are my competitors beating me? I think the only way that you can really nail down not getting distracted is knowing exactly who you are. So that the steps that we're kind of going through this presentation is, make sure you know what customers want, right? Be confident that you know what customers want. Make sure you figure out where you fit in that proposition. When we're going to about to touch on the key success factors, when you analyze and start to answer all the questions about your business and exactly what you're offering, and then you also are passionate about that, that's when you get your self-confidence and you get the confidence around your business to go, do you know what? I've researched, I've done the right thing. I know how I need to succeed. I know financially that will work if I stick to it. I know that customers want that. And when you have that confidence, it's all about, I guess you'd say it's confidence. You put the blinkers on and you just forget about what people are doing around you. But I think if you haven't done the work to find out what those things are, that's when that little bit of self-doubt comes in, and that can be quite dangerous. I think you're probably spot on in terms of not getting distracted. In the first 4 years of Snap Fitness, we never released a single piece of PR. We never approached any media agencies. We never went on Health Club magazine and touted ourselves as the best new upcoming brand. We just decided on a strategy, put the blinkers on, didn't speak to anyone. As we'd say in Australia, it was head down, bum up, and just worked for it. And it wasn't until that sort of 5th year where we were published as one of the top 10 fitness brands that I think anyone even really knew we existed. And that's perfect, because we just you don't want the noise. And I think it was only that because we had a clear idea of where we wanted to go. So yeah.
Okay, great. I've got another question. You might answer it. Yeah, I've got another question. You might answer it in just a second. So I'll let you carry on. And then obviously, if anyone's got any questions, please do ask in the chat function.
No dramas. Okay, so what are the key success factors? So look, you really probably only have time to focus on 3. Any more than 3, it's just going to go out of control. And look, there's a real hint here that the key success factors to your business really might not what you expect. I ask this question to a lot of people, when they're starting up new business and seeking advice, and it's people. My team has to be the best, or I've got to have the best technology, or this. And they're the really obvious answers in a lot of different businesses, but they're probably not what you expect. And so, for Snap Fitness, I would have said, if I hadn't analyzed business, I would say, geez, we need the best staff. We need to have amazing club managers. Our gyms need to be designed beautifully. But, in reality, the key success factor for our business after researching was far more boring and not exciting than all of those 3. So, and I'll explain this. So we're franchised, right? And so the locations that we opened gyms in were leased by the franchisees. And we knew that to succeed, we needed to have really prime, prominent locations where customers would walk past or drive past and see us, and it was close to where they lived or worked. And to get those absolutely prime sites that we were aiming for, we had to compete with the likes of Pure Gym, Gym Group, which were, publicly traded or private equity backed, had huge purses of cash. And here's us as a small independent franchise chain trying to convince a landlord, hey, you'd be far better off renting your building to franchise A, who's never run a business before in his life, versus this massive $1 million backed publicly traded companies. And landlords always look for the best combination of rental yield and a combination of high rents and having a financially secure tenant who can afford to pay that rent. And so when we were starting out, we realized we would absolutely never be able to secure good locations without owners that had the financial capabilities and the experience to win over the landlords against these competitors. So our first key factor for success with Snap Fitness was franchise selection. So we could only accept franchisees that had a certain net worth, that had owned businesses before, that could provide landlord references when they applied for a site. And this was really strange because it actually diminished our potential to sell franchises, but it massively increased our chances of securing top quality locations for our business. And of course, when we had top quality locations, the clubs made money, which in turn attracted franchisees. Had we gone down a different route, which was we could have sold loads of franchises if we just sold them to anybody. We would have ended up in subpar locations. The returns would have been poor, and then the business would have halted very, very quickly there afterwards. So it didn't seem like it would be a key success factor day one. And certainly we didn't know anything about landlords in the UK. And turns out they're like all landlords, they're greedy. But in the UK, there's a lot of competition for sites. And so for us, that factor was franchise selection. And this was all we did for the first 3 years. We really didn't focus on anything else. And we just focused on franchise selection and getting those franchisees that had the experience. And the rest kind of worked itself out. And so that kind of points to number two. So when you figure out what the real key to your success is, you need to just relentlessly pursue it. And even if it doesn't make sense, if you got, for us, we had franchisees saying, sell me a territory, I want to join your brand. They didn't meet the criteria that we had in our key success factors. And we had to say no. And we had to say no to, lots and lots of money. But it's a long-term view. So you've got to be relentless in your vision for your brand and how it's going to succeed. And to point three, don't get distracted by easy money where it may exist. So I'm not sure what the key success factors are in your industry, in activity centers and things like that. But I certainly imagine there'd be an element of location and community and things like that. So when you think about it, try not to think about it so much as the services that you offer or the people that you employ. Think about it outside of the constraints of that, and certainly that potentially could help. So got to find your top three and chase them down as fast as you can. Moving on to marketing your message. So if we kind of go back through the steps, and I'm rehashing out here, we've assumed we love what we do. We have figured out what our customers want. We've decided that we found a nice little place for us in the mid-market here. We know what the factors are for our business to succeed, and we're going to chase those down. Now we've got to kind of figure out, we've kind of got the basics of a really good business strategy here, but how are we going to communicate that to our customers? And our customers could be franchisees, it could be actual customers buying services or products, but how are we going to communicate those? And how easy is it to market the differences in that product or service? So, as Snap Fitness, we decided that we'd offer free group fitness, we'd have functional training areas, we'd have these really nice smaller gyms that had a community feel, which had nice clientele because it was slightly more expensive. We'd restrict our member numbers so there'd be not too many people in the gym, it wouldn't be too crowded. These are all lovely, great things. But actually we missed this step when we were starting our strategy, and communicating that in a marketing message was terribly difficult. It really wasn't. It was quite a challenge. And to point two here is will the customers instantly recognize the value in what you're trying to communicate? So for us, we were going out and promoting, join Snap Fitness. It's not as busy as your current gym. It's much nicer than your current gym. And we offer all these little extras for free. But actually customers didn't instantly recognize the value in that. In fact, it was quite the opposite. They would look at our gym and go, geez, the gym's a little bit smaller than the big budget gym that I go to down the road. It's probably my budget gym is really busy. That small gym is probably going to be even busier. And just running ads and saying, hey, we're not busy is not really a strategy. So I can't speak too much to this point because we really got it wrong. And for 5 years, we tried to educate customers on the benefits of our business and our service offering. And do you know what? We could only convince them once we got them into the door. So for us, we ended up running a lot of free trials and a lot of incentives to get them into the door, because once they actually got into the facility and used it, then they understood and saw the value. But that ended up being quite an expensive exercise. So in your desired strategy of what you're going to do, just make sure you factor in how will I communicate it to the customer, and will they instantly go, that's a brilliant thing. Any questions on that?
I've got a question, Isaac, if I can.
Yeah,
So I spoke yesterday, Isaac, about the 4 cornerstones of a successful activity business. And those 4 things, that was 10 a.m. yesterday, if you guys joined that one. And the 4 that I mentioned were product, you need to get your product right, marketing, critical cornerstone, the people, whether your people is your franchisees, you as the leader of your sessions, or your customers, that needs to be all in sync, communication needs to be on point. and the last one being financial management, to make sure you're on top of that. Now, I also spoke about product, actually probably being the weakest cornerstone, in my opinion, for the activity sector. And this is a bit controversial, I think, to some people, because obviously a lot of people come from a teaching or coaching background in the activity sector who then start managing a business for the first time, and they love their program. For me, many of my years in my career have all been about program development. So it's kind of, I hate having to say this, but it's my honest opinion. And I think that differentiating your product can be very difficult. And actually, I do think that there are other, I think in the activity sector particularly, it's and you touched upon it already for you in the fitness space, is that parents are less discernible to the differences of your unique offering. You know, the whole, what's your USP, unique selling point, and then that gets talked about a lot in entrepreneur circles and a lot in business articles, that sort of stuff. But actually, I think sometimes you just need to find the right audience, and then make sure you just get them through the door, and then your program can speak for itself, sort of thing. So was that when you finally got people through the door, was that something you built on to retain those members? Was it just literally your facility and what you did naturally was then be able to retain them? How do you deal with retention and just initially getting them through the door, I suppose?
This could be a very long answer. So the fitness industry, I guess, probably suffers from a similar thing to maybe to the children's activity sector, that differentiation is very, very hard. So if you strip everything down to the basics, which is what I like to do, keep it simple, there is only two ways to be fit. You can increase your cardiac fitness by elevating your heart rate, and you can increase your strength by doing resistance training with bands or weights. That's it. That's the simple core of fitness. You can't differentiate in fitness because there's scientifically proven like two ways to do two different things, and that's it. And you can do those at home. You can do those in the garden. You can do them out while you're running, right? And people try and differentiate in the fitness space all the time, and it's called fads. That's why you see all these ridiculous new workout schemes, regimes. Every other season, there's something new that's going to get you ripped and shredded and in some way that you couldn't do the year before. And to be honest, it's all crap, really. There's only one way to keep fit, but people try and differentiate, and they end up creating fads instead, and they sort of come and go. So I think in industries where you've got a really low ability to differentiate, you have to find your competitive edge within your business. So I mean by having leaner operations, or by having an environment that is really appealing to come back into. So to answer your question, how do we retain our customers? We tried to create an environment that was the most likable, appealing space to be in. So knowing that customers could get their fitness from just walking down to the park, we had to make sure that there was a better reason for them to walk into our gym. So that boiled down to cleanliness. It boiled down to lighting, the music volume, the interaction between members, were they friendly, was it social? So it wasn't just one thing. I think you'd summarize, we try to differentiate based on atmosphere. So when a customer took 2 steps through the door, were they excited to be at the gym? And it was a sum of all of those things. Members were friendly, the lights were on, the place was clean, the music was pumping, the staff were smiling. It was that atmosphere. So yeah, there's no need to in a challenging area. Differentiation can be something like atmosphere, or it could be a business tool, or a business model, or a financial model. But yeah, it's hard in that space where you've got lack of options.
Okay,
but for us, atmosphere was it.
Okay, great stuff. Thanks, Isaac.
No dramas. Right, I'm going to kick on to the second to last slide. So timing. Look, I've got to be really honest. If Snap Fitness was a year later to the market, we would have either failed, or we probably would have had about 1/3 of the locations that we ended up growing out. Timing is a choice. So there's definitely, unequivocally, there's a right time and a wrong time to start trying to grow your business or grow your locations. If we had been a year later and did all the same things, we potentially could have still failed. So you can do everything right and just be at the wrong time and still fail. I think, at the time, interest in the fitness sector was really high. Margins were really high. Competition for property was fierce, but it was nowhere near as fierce as it got in the years to come. And so our timing was impeccable. If we looked at the market and maybe we were a year later, it wouldn't have been the case. A lot of the prime property would have already been taken. There would have been lots of other franchise brands out there, and there's no reason that it's not okay. There's no reason to say no. So if you're in your business today and you're thinking about expanding, and you assess the landscape and you think, geez, now might not be the right timing, it's okay to just say no. It could go, if you've only got one location and you're thinking about trying to grow it and promote your business, again, timing is a choice. Are you going to get a return on your investment if you start promoting right now, the way things are today? I can't answer that question, but maybe or maybe not. So timing is a little bit of luck, because unfortunately, some of us are already in business, and if it wasn't the right time, we've already made that decision. But you can still make choices in the future about when you're going to try and push your business to the next level, if you're going to expand into another location or to a different service or product. And choosing that time is definitely a key factor. I'm gonna skip to the last slide. And then finally, it's evolution. So, all of those steps about what your customer wants, where do you fit, and all those success factors, do you know what, they quite often change, and updating your approach is definitely required. This is not something that you want to change all the time. That would be getting distracted. Just because a competitor tries something doesn't mean it's going to work for you. But we used to sit down once a year and review our strategy. And then we used to basically just go over the same things. Do we still love it? Do the customers still want the same things? Are we still fitting in that value price? And are the factors for success the same this year as they were last year? And what happened is, about 3 years in, the factors for success changed. So we had all of our franchisees that landlords loved, and we could continue to find good locations. But we had about 60 gyms, and we had a network full of managers that would probably just been with the business a year and a half. They're starting to get a little bit tired and maybe not as motivated. And so, into that 4th year, one of our key success factors became training and development of new managers. It never was before, because we needed those franchisees for property, but after the first few years, it was training and development. And so, review it every year, change it if it needs. For our industry, it was all about avoiding fads. Every year there was a new trend, kind of like I talked about. For us, that wasn't a change in what a customer wanted. That was just competitors trying to allure customers in a different way. And, waiting to see if a fad sticks and then doing it is nothing wrong with that. I would say you're probably making good timing if you avoid those things. So in terms of growing a business, this is the checklist I use. Hopefully it's been of some use to you. But firstly, love what you do, figure out what your customers want, decide where you fit in the market, figure out those key success factors and pursue them relentlessly. Find a way to clearly market your message, choose the time wisely, and then evolve frequently. Guys, that's me. I'd love to take some questions. Thanks for listening to me rant on about my experiences in the UK.
Yeah, that's been great. Thank you so much, guys. If you've got any questions about anything that's either relevant to what you do or just out of interest from what I've experienced, please do ask them. I've got a couple to kick this off, actually, if that's okay.
Sure thing.
So how you mentioned a lot about strategy and how your success factors changed over the years. How far do you typically plan ahead? Because that's one thing that whether the people listening right now are small independent businesses that might be thriving locally, but maybe want to open more expanse across the region or nationally. How far do you plan ahead? Are you a 12-month guy? Are you a 3-year plan guy? And how strict do you stick to? Because obviously a lot of time in business, people do wing it. I think, whether you're a really great business person or not, there's an element of winging it to most people, right? I think most people, if they're really honest, that's the case. Obviously, too much of that's dangerous, right? But how far do you plan ahead with that? How far ahead would you recommend people kind of think? Obviously, it's hard right now with COVID as well.
Yeah, I think look, it depends on the type of business you're trying to grow. For us, we were trying to grow a 100-200 site business, and we sold the business last month, and the new owners, the objective is the same, and I strongly believe that they'll get there. For our business, I would be thinking 10 years ahead. That's the reality of it. I'm a long-term thinker. Things that are scary over 1 year are not so scary over 10 as well, which is a nice way to think about it. So when I think about the challenges that I'll have this year in the business that I have and the existing businesses that I have, if I thought about what the year's going to end up like, it's not great. If I think about 10 years, is fantastic, you know, because we'll survive. Certainly we won't make any money this year. We'll probably lose stacks of it. But if I think about it over 10 years, you know, so, and for anyone that's listening, you know, I still trade gyms. So I still own gyms, even though I'm not in that role anymore. And obviously they're all closed right now, and they're losing money. And so if I'm thinking about a 12-year plan, it's just going to look horrific. If I think 10 years, I'm thinking, geez, there's probably some competitors that are in worse positions than I am, and they will probably close. Some of them already have. When they close, the market is going to go back to what it was a few years ago, which was less saturated, more opportunity for sales because there's going to be less competition. And I think the ways that we're starting to train our staff and operate our business are going to help us be even leaner in the future. So yeah, I'd like to keep a 10-year view in plan at all times. If you do that, you tend to think about things that you might not have thought about. So, you know, the example with gyms is we spent about £250,000 fitting out the gym, making it look fantastic, putting the equipment in. It's about £500,000 investment. If you think about 10 years, you realize that about 6 or 7 years, you're going to have to spend about another $250,000 to refurbish it, replace all the broken equipment. Otherwise, you just end up being that tired, old, rundown gym that nobody wants to go to, which is a lot of the gyms in the UK. Knowing that and planning for that helps you make different decisions about how much you charge, you know, when you're going to do that, and being aware that is coming is important. And again, if you think about it over 10 years, your competitor might be in a gym space. You have a gym down the road that's half the price of you. You know, they're brand new, they're half the price, and you're racking your brain going, how are they doing this? Like, if I did that, I would go out of business. But you think about it over a year, and it's really hard to make sense of it. You think about it over 10 years, and they haven't thought about some of the things that are coming down their pipeline in a few years' time, when their equipment's old, the buildings run down, and they need to come up with that money to make the place great again. And when they get to that point, they will either struggle or fail. And if they struggle or fail, you know, we'll still be there to take care of their customers. So yeah, future planning, 10 years, it's kind of there. Doesn't mean we don't pivot in between, but.
Okay, it's really interesting. Okay, I've got one more question. I've asked you in a second, but I've got one on the chat from Tessa. So Tessa says, when looking for different ways of marketing, what types of things do you look for? Questions that you ask suppliers so that you know how the money is well spent. So a marketing question, what type of things do you look for when it comes to marketing?
Yeah, can I ask a reverse question before I answer? And in the children's activity space, what is the primary method of marketing? Is it all digital for you guys already, or is it?
Tessa asking the question actually runs Club Hub, which is an online directory. So I think she's probably a good one to answer it. But yeah, it's a combination, generally speaking. There's directories. There are Facebook ads, Instagram, there's a lot of social media type stuff. There's your old school grassroots of notice boards, flyering, email marketing, still pretty prominent. It just depends on where you fit, right? So it's kind of a real mixture. Generally speaking, most people kind of keep things quite lean. So the marketing spend in the consumer sector, typically speaking, isn't significant. But then it said, you know, comparative to where the revenue is, it might actually be quite similar to gym. So I'd be interested to see what typically, you know, you percentage spends, and obviously what Tessa was saying about what do you look for with marketing.
Yeah, so I think we are actually quite similar. So for most gyms, they would probably barely spend between £300 and £700 a month on marketing. That's probably the range that they would spend. Maybe in a seasonal peak, they might spend 1,000, maybe 2,000 if they're lucky. Because the budgets are so lean, you have to know if it's working. And so we tested over 2 years, newspapers, radio. We never did TV. We weren't big enough. We did newspapers, radio. We did magazines. We did flyer drops. We did email blasts, SMS blasts, like the works. And we did crazy, ridiculous offers in them so that we knew if they got to somebody, they would probably buy it. And they didn't work. And to be quite frank, none of them worked. The only method that what we ended up boiling down to was we're only going, because the budget is so small, we need to know £1 spent. Did it get a customer? Did it get a lead? Did it get a phone call? Did it get a view? Like small budgets, you need to know. And unfortunately, with all those old school methods, there's no way to return to get your return on investment. So yeah, we 98% of the time we are Facebook and Google. So Google search and Facebook. And, you know, it's a bit painful to do it, but we've all had to do it at some point. Is that whole world of digital advertising and search advertising and, you know, pay per click seems really daunting and it seems really complicated. But it's actually really easy. And both Facebook and Google have account managers that will give you free training. They'll give you free support. They'll let you know how to set up an ad, how to optimize it, all of these different things. So if you're a small business, which I think most of you are, I would encourage you to try to do it yourself. There's a lot of free courses available to learn about it. And I would also, and then when you say try to do it yourself, Facebook and Google will provide a professional representative to help you do these things. Even if you only did it for 6 months and then you'd let a marketing agency do it. But I think the question was, how do you make sure that money is getting spent in the right way? The only way to know is first educate yourself around how those ads actually work. Then if you're working with a marketing agency, you can understand and ask them for how many clicks did I get? How many customers converted? What was the average, you know, cost per lead, or whatever that might be. But if you don't know those metrics, you need to learn them first. But there's people out there that will help you do it.
Okay, and a follow-on question from Tessa. So, should a really bad return for a physical newspaper and magazine advertising in the past? Is there any marketing that you've had little return from, and what wouldn't you recommend?
Yeah, anything. It sounds really bad, but like we always get like you know, like a hospital magazine or like magazines, you know, like a local magazines that kind of go around the community and stuff like that. And that might be different. Maybe that's where people look, but like I have never had a return ever from those things. I almost view them as charity, to be honest. So if the community magazine is trying to sell advertising space, I will only contribute and put an ad in there if the magazine is like run for charity, because it's literally charity. You're just giving them money.
So all your focus is digital, pretty much.
100%, yeah.
All right, great. My final question before we finish up, we're going into another session after this. ICAP members, if you're joining us live, there's another session for ICAP members after this, and that's all about business mindset. And obviously, you've been very successful, Isaac, in your career. How much has mindset played a part? Obviously, there's things you can learn and skills you can do, and obviously your business knowledge now is much better, I'm sure, than what it was 15 or so years ago, right? But how much has mindset played a part in your success?
I think from a young age, I've had a fairly good work ethic. I think there's a question from Tess Robinson. She's asked, do I have a mentor? The answer is yes. I don't know if he knows he's my mentor or not. It's just a colleague of mine who's a bit older and a bit wiser, who I seem to call every weekend with a different problem. But I think what I've had is I've been very lucky in every job that I've worked in to have someone more senior than me who has taken an interest in what I've done. And in return, I've been very excited about working there. And of course, I've worked very hard. And I think that's kind of perpetuated my career a little bit, where, you know, I've had great people that have inspired me to work hard. And so I've developed an attitude where, hey, just work hard and it'll all work out. So yeah, mindset, I've just been surrounded by hard workers. And so I guess it rubs off to you. Also being in the fitness sector, I do find that work, you know, exercising and working out, you know, plays a massive difference to your mental state. The days where I'm super grumpy and snappy at people, I probably haven't gone for a run or exercised, and that, you know, that genuinely makes a big difference. If I work out 3 times a week, I have a great week. If I don't, I'm probably, you know, not someone you want to hang out with. So yeah, I'd say a combination of, you know, being around passionate people and being lucky to have those mentors in my life, and exercise to keep your stress low.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Isaac. We're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for being part of today. Thank you guys for joining us. Those that are joining live, obviously, if you're watching recording, hopefully you found that useful. I certainly did. Yeah, Isaac, thank you so much for being a part of today. I really appreciate it. And guys, like I said, if you're an ICAP member, there is another session that's going to be happening in 10 or so minutes with Jenny Dunman from Daisy First Aid about business mindset. Please join us for that if you can. If not, have a lovely day. Have a lovely weekend, everyone. And yeah, Isaac, thanks very much for joining us.
No worries. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. Have a good day.